I'm Yardfish, and if you had ever taken a look at my hardcore video that I released a couple months ago, you'd have probably noticed that I didn't actually get around to finishing that video. I kinda ended up ditching it about 2/3 of the way through because I didn't exactly feel like spending Christmas working on something like that. I'm sure most people could probably understand why. However, the things that I wanted to talk about there, well, I still do want to talk about them. And seeing as it's going to be a couple months between now and when I can actually reveal what I've been working on, I figured this is a pretty good time to just, maybe take some of the things from that video and expand on them and provide more insight about this thing and the people that exist within it. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was something that I noticed like very early on, and I'm pretty sure you yourself, if you've ever taken a look at how these parasites interact with each other, the shit that they say in their comments, you'd have probably noticed that they have a very specific response to certain accusations. Let's say somebody shows up on one of these comment threads and calls these people degenerate, a sexual deviant, a animal rapist, or most commonly a kitty diddler. Because people have been accusing these individuals of being child touchers for as far back as 2018, and by present day it's kind of only intensified. So they usually respond to this particular accusation in a very consistent manner, which is to say they curl up like a cheese noodle and start screeching, "Nuh-uh, not me, you." And by that I mean they constantly claim that no, there's nothing weird going on here, there's nothing creepy, nothing that would paint them out to be some kind of weirdo or deviant. No, to even suggest such a thing must make you a deviant. So yeah, I've been seeing this shit for a very long time since I started looking into these dudes. And as I mentioned in a previous video, at first I did not think that these dudes were, inclined to such things. I thought that this was kind of like, a Peter tactic at work wherein they try to use shock value to try and draw attention to an issue. And a pretty good way to get this kind of monkey torture stuff taken down pretty quickly is to conflate it with child abuse. So I just kind of assume it was histrionics and stuff at the time, but as I showed in that video, the more I started digging into this stuff, the more obvious it started to become that this wasn't the case. And I'm not just talking about like doing research into the fact that there's a high rate of crossover between people who enjoy torturing animals and people who enjoy abusing kids, right? Oh, and speaking of that, I've attached a little folder specifically down below just with a bunch of studies on that particular topic, which has kind of become a field of interest in the last couple of years. So you can read all about the reason as to why animal torturers, zoophiles, and kitty diddlers tend to get along so well. For what it's worth, it seems like a lot of people in all of these communities didn't necessarily start off with a sexual inclination to their actions. A lot of them just seem to be like they had a bit of a sadistic streak. Maybe they liked watching puppies get kicked or some shit like that. But the more they started indulging in their appetites and looking at this kind of content, the greater those appetites became, and they wanted more and more extreme stuff, more and more intense stuff, and it escalated from, puppy stomps and whatnot to puppy rape or kitty rape or whatever. Because it's the ultimate form of debasement, but that's not the point of this video right now. In addition to, doing research on this stuff and specifically speaking to people that work with members of these kinds of communities, both the animal abusing kinds and the kid abusing kinds, and it provided a lot of insight, and it was one of the things that definitely started getting me warmed up to the idea that yeah, these people are kind of freaks that would definitely probably do this kind of stuff, which was helped along with the fact that statistically speaking, the videos that show very questionable content like molestation of the animal, sexual abuse of the animal, or the presence of fecal matter, urine, got insane views, more than any other types of videos in this field. And these kinds of videos do continue to rack up hundreds of thousands of views. Channels like Chara Chen and Teacher Bunsum, when they still existed, they accumulated a ridiculous amount of subs in an incredibly short amount of time. And like I mentioned in the previous videos, that guy was very openly molesting the monkeys in his care and showing off their shit whenever he got a chance. And they absolutely loved it. They would openly state how much they loved it, and that's not even getting into the channels that upload monkey porn, which is exactly what it sounds like, just videos of monkeys humping each other and shit like that. Those had literally millions of views. They still do have millions of views. So it's like, this is something that's supported by tangible evidence. It's obvious. Why would you deny something that's so obvious? Why deny something then contradicted with your own actions? For example, since I've opened up an email address specifically dedicated to this kind of thing, I've gotten some interesting insights from concerned passerbys. One person told me to have a look at his comment chain, and yeah, it was definitely interesting. I mentioned these people like to timestamp videos where monkeys are being molested and shit, right? Which is exactly what this person did here. They timestamped the exact moment when the guy in question started jerking off the baby monkey. Some random passerby saw this and said, as you would expect, the guy filming these videos, he knows what his audience likes. And he does, it appears, he does. They went through the trouble of timestamping it, so yeah. But then the person who did said timestamping shows up and was like, oh my god, that is so disgusting that you would even suggest that. What is wrong with you? Something must be wrong with you. There's nothing sexual going on here. You just timestamped it, though. Everybody could see that you timestamped it. What are you trying to pull? Like, this community I already mentioned supports each other unconditionally, so they'll see a comment like that and they'll just upvote it as much as possible and try to back the person up. Tell them, yeah, you're definitely one right. Yeah, that guy must be a weirdo, but you can give that comment as many updates as you want. But the fact remains that y'all are timestamping videos of dudes jerking off baby monkeys, though. Why? Like, every single time somebody else points out their own actions, they deny it, even though it's right there. Similarly, when I released that hardcore video back then, it was done with the understanding that the monkey molesters were going to very much enjoy that video. And they did. They've been trying to take it down pretty much every day since I put it up. And it hasn't quite worked out as of yet. They've also taken to reporting anyone that comments on these videos, which is interesting to see because you all know the owner of a YouTube channel can see it when you do that, right? But yeah, over the last year or so, I've had a bunch of these monkey molesting dudes show up on my channel telling me that they're actually secretly really nice guys. They help save kids, they rescue orphans and shit. At this point, I kind of expect them to start telling me that they're Kryptonians who have been secretly watching over Earth for the last couple thousand years and so on. And who can count how many times they've actually saved us from certain doom? And the fact that I'm saying shit like this about nice people like this is just obscene. In fact, this very same guy here is a special case because I saw this guy write an essay, a full-on dissertation attempting to valiantly defend himself against somebody who would call him a freak, hitting every single one of them Zeus sadist talking points as he went along. You feel free to pause and read as much as you want. You're probably going to find some good jokes in there because I know I definitely found some hilarious shit in there because after taking like half an hour to write this defense of himself, you just had to click on his name and take it to his page. Well, show you that this dude has an entire playlist solely dedicated to baby monkeys getting ass fondled. Like, why? Why would you spend so much time writing this shit only to contradict it like this or to show up on one of these perverts YouTube channels where a guy is, fondling a baby monkey and valiantly attempt to defend them against the horrifying Karens? I mean, dog, seriously, why? Out of all the things that you could be doing with your time, you're defending a grown-ass man fondling a baby monkey? I had to be missing something here, right? And I've had variations of this same thing show up multiple times in the comment section of my videos, and the question remains, why go through all of this effort? You could have just kept your mouth shut and nobody would have known. And that's kind of the weird thing too, because this denial doesn't just exist on YouTube comments and stuff where, it could be understood to an extent. People have their pride. And, if they perceive that they're being publicly attacked, they might want to defend themselves. But it continues even within their own private little hug boxes, their safe spaces. These dudes spent a lot of time telling each other that they're not degenerates, they're not deviants or pedophiles at all. It's the evil Karens accusing them of such behavior that are the actual threats. They're the ones you need to watch out for. And, this might hold some kind of weight if the same people saying this shit didn't then immediately say something like this, where they express their desire to see a baby monkey get impaled on a giant dildo, or be subjected to a pair of agony or other esoteric torture techniques. And yeah, I'm pretty sure nobody knows what a pair of agony is, But in case you were curious, it's a torture device that's inserted into the rectal or vaginal cavity and then split open from the inside, tearing open the associated orifice. Oh, and yeah, I forgot to mention, but this is a woman, by the way. You might expect something like that from some fat, hairy, greasy guy who hangs out around playgrounds and shit, but no. These are a bunch of middle-aged women saying this shit. But, aside from that, it is really, really weird watching these people tell each other on an almost daily basis that they are definitely not a bunch of weirdos, freaks, or degenerates. No one can hurt you inside their farms. You can relax. It makes me wonder if these people walk around with some kind of like intrinsic trigger in the back of their head where they hear the word pedophile, even if it's like they're in a crowded restaurant or something and somebody 10 tables down asks a question to one of their friends like, you all seen that Minecraft streamer who turned out to be a pedophile or something? And then they jump onto the table from like halfway across the room and shout, no, not I, you. Yeah, jokes. But look, in all seriousness though, the kind of shit that these people do in their private groups, not just say, is kind of on another level entirely. This is what I just showed you that was just a glimpse and insight into some of the things that they desire. But the kind of videos that they pay for has become pretty depraved. Genital mutilation, strangulation, the bondage shit, that's all pretty bad. But there's worse stuff in there. Like someone paid one of these freaks cash to record himself raping 3 infant female monkeys with a toothbrush. Now you probably just heard that shit and thought to yourself, whoa, ease up there, guy, that can't be real. How much of a depraved subhuman parasite do you actually have to be to request something like that intentionally? Not just request it, pay for it. That can't be real. Nobody would do that. And besides, if they did, you can't prove it anyway without showing that video. And under most situations, they'd be correct. But, the weirdos that do this kind of shit, they like to run their mouths. They can't shut up sometimes. And the guy doing this, well, he is really enjoying it. And he is narrating what he's doing. So, you can hear the audio, at least. Obviously, this is going to be pretty disturbing, so you can skip this. You probably should for your own sake. But here's the audio from that video.
Okay. Try to clean the pussy, bro. Like this. Like this. Okay, like this, bro. Too clean. This is the clean of the pussy, bro. Oh god. Oh. I think that's a masturbation. Masturbation. Okay. And now mini. Oh god, this mini. Oh, like that. Maybe we try to solve, bro.
So, yeah, that's the kind of shit that these dudes are paying for. And you're probably wondering as well, what's up with that guy's voice? And, yeah, for whatever reason, all of these people doing these torture vids and shit, they sound like they spend their entire lives getting repeatedly kicked in the balls. Or maybe they had some kind of unhappy circumcision accident, and as a result, they've grown up to be spiteful and hateful. And maybe that's why they're so fixated on monkey junk. But then I remember they're not doing this on their own accord. They're getting paid to do it. But, again, this guy seems like he was really enjoying what he was doing. And, yeah, this is a photo from that particular scenario. These animals are tiny, like a couple weeks old. But this is just one video among many. These people are also paying for videos of baby monkeys being sodomized with foreign objects, baby monkeys being molested with like heated ice picks and shit, or being forced to fillet foreign objects. Like, there is no end to the depravity that some of these people will go to. And seeing all of this shit, how do you still deny it? How do you get up in the morning and sit there and be like, nah, I ain't no weirdo, I ain't no freak show, it's everybody else. This shit was just baffling to me at first. But then I started looking into other zoo sadist groups, and it sort of became clear that this was kind of normal behavior for these types of communities. You know, a really good example of this would be that YouTuber Kerry Wolf. Dude gained a bit of fame for himself a couple years back when he showed up on a Shane Dawson documentary where he was there to dispel a lot of the myths about the furry communities and so on. And a lot of people seemed to like him when he showed up there. He seemed like a kind of derpy, kind of goofy, but relatively wholesome, harmless kind of guy, right? A nice guy like this couldn't possibly be some kind of weirdo or some kind of freak show. Just listen to what he has to say.
So most of the furry fandom is not a fetish. There is a sexual side to it, but it's not that large.
Right.
Most of us do it for like a hobby or a lifestyle.
Right. Well, we'll get to the hobby and the lifestyle in a second, but I want to get to the sex.
Somebody who says that with a straight face couldn't possibly be a liar, right? That's just not possible. Well, that little tidbit kind of aged like a dead raccoon that was locked in somebody's closet for a couple of weeks, because it kind of turned out that Caro had certain inclinations, and it appeared to involve mutt molestation as well as roadkill raping. It was the kind of shit that ended up shocking quite a few people, and of course, naturally, he would defend himself by saying that he was hacked by Iranian super hackers that were looking for the Omega code, and they just decided to take a detour onto him or something. And every time he made an excuse, every time he attempted to deny what he was done, more and more information would come out from this zoo sadist group that he was involved in on Telegram. And these defenses were then meticulously torn apart by the individuals investigating and looking into this case. It became an impossibility that this Caro individual was innocent, but yet he kept insisting that he was a really nice guy and he was the victim of some serious shenanigans. This particular case is pretty well documented on YouTube. You can just Google that shit and find a number of videos talking about this kind of stuff. And as far as I'm aware, he still continues to deny this, despite the fact that no one believes him. On that note, I'll jump to another member of this very same community that Caro was involved with that went by the name of Woof, a Cuban puppy torturer. And by far one of the worst zoo sadists of the bunch. When he got caught, well, yeah, this dude started crying, whining, bitching, telling everyone that he was a super swell guy. He loved animals. He loved animals so much. He adopted all of these strays, went into great detail about his passion for Dobermans and dogs like that. And he was the goodest good guy that could have ever possibly lived, you know. And to other people, he probably may have come across that way. But the fact remains, he was adopting dogs, raping them, torturing, killing them, and then burying them in his backyard. And when he got caught, he folded like a bitch, and rather than accepting any sort of blame for his actions, tried to pin it on everything else, like the devil music and the dark and twisted people that he met on certain corners of the internet. Like, this dude's confession reads like some shit you would see in an anime, a monologue from some kind of poorly written villain. And it was the same shit with the Omega cat killer. She was sitting there taunting everybody, y'all's a bunch of suckers, y'all ain't never gonna catch me. And as soon as she got caught, her balls just shriveled up and fell off, apparently, because she started telling everybody that she has a dark side and a light side. The light side loves animals, really, really, really loves animals, but it's a dark side that takes control and makes it do all these terrible, terrible things. Holy shit, I kind of just realized that all of these people sound like really shitty anime villains. But they're all the same, like even on the grimiest, shit-stained corners of the darknet where these communities are very well tucked away and you're not really gonna find them unless you know where to look. These people are still a bunch of bitches that start crying whenever anyone shows up and calls them a bunch of freaks, like this dude over here, who's just completely offended by the fact that somebody would say these kinds of things to him, would mock him, look down upon him like this. They do not understand that he actually loves animals a lot, like he loves cats a lot according to him. Also seems to like kids as well, in legally unacceptable ways, but that's not the point. This guy feels sick when he watches these kinds of videos with like people jerking off into animal intestines and stuff. I did mention that was a thing in my last video, but despite the disgust, he just can't help himself from rubbing one out to that shit. And he expects you to feel sympathy for that, to see his perspective and understand where he's coming from. Look, guy, I think this is a really simple situation, alright? If you like cats, like you claim you do, stop jingling your jolly bags to videos of cats getting their heads chopped off and then the corpses desecrated, it kind of gives me the impression that you don't really like cats. Oh, and shit, speaking of the darknet stuff, there was a dude on one of these groups that came out and said that, oh yeah, I went looking for this stuff on the darknet too. But unfortunately, he found out that all the people who were into the monkey torture stuff on there were, also pedophiles. And he was dismayed by that, but thank God he found this group. Dude, what makes you think this was any different? Do you even understand what you ended up getting yourself into once you joined? But whatever, that is his problem to deal with. Moving on. And this consistent pattern of behavior was just so interesting to me that I had to get in touch again with somebody who has been dealing with these kinds of people for 20 years. In my previous videos, I used a couple clips from an interview that I did with Jenny Edwards about 8 months ago. All of those clips were from the exact same interview. If you didn't see those videos, well, she's pretty much the only person in the US who specializes in zoophiles and zoo sadists. She's primarily a researcher and law enforcement consultant, works with legislators and prosecutors on a daily basis, and it was her research that served as a catalyst for the FBI's own internal investigations. But that interview was way back in the day when I was young and naive and didn't know as much about zoo sadists as I do now, and as a result, I wasn't able to ask as many questions as I can now. So I scheduled another interview to line up some pertinent questions. A major one being, why do these people deny the obvious? Why put so much energy and effort into something that you're then going to contradict with your own actions and do so openly? That just doesn't make any sense. And here's some of what I got. They would talk at great lengths with regards to the stuff that they want to do that's, it's difficult to not see it in a sexual light, such as sodomizing the animal. A guy talks about, raping the animal and breaking its bones and stuff like that. But if anybody else mentions that this is disgusting, you people are a bunch of like zoos or pedos or whatever, they get incredibly mad, they get incredibly defensive. Personally, I think that's one of the most fascinating things about this community, because they're so on this denial of things that they're clearly doing. Like, you can literally just scroll up and see that they're lying. They leave such giant digital footprints that you can track their deviant activity and see that, yeah, this is what you're consistently doing, but you're consistently denying it, So it's like, how common is that regarding like among zoos and stuff like that? There's this constant denial of the stuff that they're doing.
In my experience, it's pretty common.
Yeah.
You and I talked about this before, that Sykes and Matza were a couple of researchers who were looking into.
Yep. I was reading it as we right before I spoke to you.
Yeah, they originally were looking at juvenile delinquent justification for skipping school. I mean, that's kind of where it started, and they came up with this theory of neutralization, they called it, because they found some very common techniques, common themes that would come up over and over again among all the different juveniles that they interviewed. And they had these justifications for their behavior. And over time, so that was like in the 50s, they did that research. But over time, many other researchers have found that neutralization theory fits very well in a number of scenarios. Recently, I was talking with someone who has done some work on white collar crime. And they discovered that the whole neutralization theory fit very well among people who were raping and pillaging people for their money, right?
Yeah.
Conning them into these shoddy investments and whatever. And they use the same kind of denial techniques. So it's probably just kind of a natural behavior that each of us do. Where you and I have talked about is how similar the denials are between pedophiles and zoophiles.
Yeah.
For example, it's really, really common to say, well, I would never hurt an animal. You must have bad intention, or you are probably doing bad things that are much worse than what anything that I have done, right?
Exactly.
That's condemning the condemner, right? So so they have some very standard justifications for their behavior.
Yeah.
And in a group, those things come up a lot.
And are amplified significantly, yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, because basically they all regurgitate the exact same points that they do on YouTube in their private groups. And I mentioned 4chan a bit earlier, right? So these guys occasionally try to create posts on 4chan regarding monkey stuff, but it gets nuked like really quickly in just a couple hours usually. And these posts are usually like a flurry of activity from the monkey molesters themselves. And then there are a bunch of bewildered onlookers that are just standing there looking on as like, what the hell is this? And, I'd see questions like this. One guy was like, why are you people so obsessed with like baby monkey penises? Because like half of the videos they post are like stuff featuring genital manipulation and stuff. And they responded with the exact same response that they would get on YouTube when you call them a freak, and which is to say, you don't understand how bad this animal is. They like attack kids and they spread diseases. Like, okay, but why do you want to stick your finger up its bunghole, though?
Blame the victim, right?
Yeah,
it used to happen in rape cases. Like when she was asking for it, she wore a skirt.
You mentioned the guy who was like,
she got drunk. It's her fault.
Yeah, and you mentioned as well a lot of the cases you got with regards to animals. That guy who was like, my dog is a slut, which is why I did what I did. Or people is like, that horse stepped on my like iguana or something like that.
Right.
And that's why I strangled it, etc., etc. It's like they all just seem to use that exact same playbook, even in the most absurd situations, that it becomes comical at times. Like looking at the stuff that they say and do, and then looking at their justifications for it, which is like seemingly endless. So yeah, apparently this sort of behavior is pretty well documented in law enforcement circles. Now the rest of this interview I'll probably post it up in like a week or two. It's mostly like a bunch of legal stuff that we discuss in it, but maybe somebody might find it interesting or informative, as I wasn't able to post the previous interview that I did with her because there were a bit too many sensitive details that I couldn't release. But one more thing that I thought I should probably share is that a lot of the data I used in my original studies, well, they're a couple years old, right? And as I've mentioned, this stuff is being taken a lot more seriously within the last 3-4 years and so on. And there's a lot more research being done into it. So I wanted to head directly to the source again and find out, what is it currently looking like in terms of estimates, at least on the side of researchers and law enforcement, regarding the crossover rate between pedophiles and animal abusers and stuff like that? And originally it was estimated to be around like 38-39%. It's currently hanging around 50% there. And this isn't simply like a case in the US alone. Australia apparently is taking this shit way more seriously than I thought. For example, there was a video that started floating around on the net a couple months ago featuring a person torturing, raping, and killing 9 puppies in front of their mother before killing the mother itself and urinating on its corpse. Some sick shit. Probably the worst shit I've ever seen. Outside of the monkey rapists. But yeah, this dude got reported like 2 months ago and they did not like dick around. And this guy barely had enough time to take some deep breaths before he got his ass raided and dragged off to jail. And that investigation wasn't conducted by like some sort of animal welfare team or something like that. It was a subset of law enforcement specializing in anti-child exploitation. Similarly, from my conversations with various social workers in the US, I was made to understand that animal abuse, the presence of animal abuse in a home, is considered to be the primary indicator of child abuse in a home, which was interesting to find out. Didn't know that. There were a couple of things I also didn't know that people have since pointed out to me since my last couple of videos. For example, in addition to like the whole bondage shit and the strangulation and genital mutilation stuff, these people also have a fixation on the chili peppers getting rubbed into the animal's genitals, face, and wounds thing. Well, somebody pointed out to me that that is a very specific form of torture used in various Southeast Asian countries against child sex slaves. It's used when they aren't being cooperative with their pimps for disciplinary reasons. I'm sure it is a complete coincidence that this very specific form of torture is being used on these baby monkeys and just happens to come from the same region where this kind of child-related content is also filmed and distributed. I'm sure that is a complete coincidence. But hey, on one last note, right, there's this Reddit that a lot of these monkey molesters have been keeping their eye on for a very long time, right? And they've more or less overtaken it and infested it. It's supposed to be about looking into the whole monkey hate shit on YouTube, and well, but now it's a spot where a lot of them actually hang out, which is actually kind of funny. But as I was finishing up this video, I decided to give it a check out and saw that there was this thread written by a monkey molester who was making calls for neutrality and stuff like that. This is a spot that's intended for serious academic research, and you can't really get any research done where if a monkey molester opens its mouth, it gets shot down and everybody shouts at it and calls him a pedophile or a degenerate or whatever. It's the same shit I've been talking about, just like really stretched out over multiple paragraphs. Unfortunately, the post got taken down before I could screen cap it, which sucks. So if anybody's from that Reddit or whatever and they're looking at this and you have a copy, you managed to screen cap it or archive it, I think it would be pretty funny to show. But this is kind of like the thing on that particular site. There are a whole bunch of these posts that I saw where monkey molesters show up and they're like, I'm a monkey molester, ask me anything. I'm not really sure what anyone actually expects to come out of these AMAs. It's kind of stupid. But hey, if there are any monkey molesters or people from this particular Reddit that are watching this video and y'all are actually interested in academic research like, that monkey molester said, then maybe you don't want to skimp out on research methods. There's a reason they kind of teach you that before you move on to actual research. It's where you learn and understand that when it comes to accumulating relevant scientific data, surveys kind of exist at the absolute bottom of the pile. Surveys are most useful, and by surveys I mean simply asking questions, when you're talking about simple and uncomplicated issues such as what's your favorite coffee. But even then it can be a bit iffy at times because people are inclined to provide you with an answer that they think you want. But once you get past the mundane stuff, the uncomplicated stuff, and you start moving into issues that are more taboo and recognized as taboo in society, the accuracy of your answers are going to plummet considerably, which is why if you're going to use survey data or, simply interviews and asking people questions and shit for the purpose of actual academic research, it's going to have to be supplemented with something that takes that into question, such as a polygraph or some other form of examination. Because I see dudes saying shit like this. It's like, well, I spoke to some monkey molesters and they all told me that they are definitely not popping their cork to any of this. That is just absurd and simply insane. And my guy, did you just ask a bunch of random strangers on the internet if they're a bunch of zoophiles or zoo sadists or kitty diddlers? And you expected what as your response? You expected them to tell you yes? Yeah. To really highlight the absurdity of questions like these and, AMA posts like these, kind of want to draw your attention to a study that was conducted in the early 2000s that was also referenced in the FBI's own internal investigation regarding, animals and kids and whatever. See, a bunch of researchers decided to pose a series of questions to a number of convicted child molesters. Convicted child molesters, not accused or alleged. These people already ruined their lives. To the rest of society, they are considered scum, trash, and vermin. So one of the questions that they were asked was, how many of y'all been fiddling around with any dogs or cats or any of that shit? And these dudes were offended. They were upset. What is this shit? They have standards. They only mess with kids. They don't deal up with any of this animal group and bullshit. That's disgusting. Have some dignity. And only around 3 or 4% of these individuals confessed to messing with both kids and animals. But then they were subjected to a series of polygraph examinations, and they started singing a different tune. The amount of people that self-confessed went from 4% to 36%, and that does not include those who failed their polygraph test and continued to deny it. This was also before the introduction of any more, shall we call them, invasive methods of acquiring the truth. So do you understand the point that I'm making here? These people, as I mentioned before, were seen by everyone already as a piece of shit. They had nothing more to lose, and yet they still lied. They still denied it. Because people still feel shame. And having people find out what you really are, that that your interest in this kind of content goes well beyond what you simply see on YouTube and shit like that. It is shameful. Nobody wants to really be seen as something like that, even if they are. So yeah, you can fully expect these people to deny it to their dying breath, even as they pay money to a creepy Indonesian weirdo to sodomize an infant monkey with a foreign object. Even as they share these videos amongst themselves and pat each other on the back and tell each other, we aren't weirdos, dog, we ain't degenerates. It's that evil yardfish that's projecting his degeneracy onto us. We must stop him and his fake Jamaican accent. What? I mean, come on. It shouldn't surprise many of you monkey molesters. I've been around you for like a year at this point. For all you know, we're probably best friends, and you've been complaining about yardfish to yardfish. The world is a magical place, is it not? Well, anyway, at this point, I kind of wonder if I should just not make any videos for like the next 2 to 3 months or so, because it's getting kind of hard to really talk about this issue with the restrictions that I have on me. I haven't decided as of yet, but you know, maybe not. Maybe I can just fill the gaps with stuff that a bit more research focused. We'll see. But till then, thanks for watching, both the regular folks and the monkey molesters who make up like a third of my audience. Till next time, special thank you to Nervous Neuron, Solo, Ziggy, Friendly Forest, Liz, Elaine, PRG, and D.